Good morning, boys and girls. It's Charlie Craven, and I'm back to tie you a cool little midge pattern that I came up with a few years ago called a 2-bit midge. And it just occurred to me the other day that I don't have a video for this one. So this one's actually been available from Umpqua for a couple seasons now. And for some reason, it never occurred to me to do a video. So I'm going to do one now. Now this fly is a derivative of the 2-bit series, obviously, and what that means is that it's got 2 tungsten beads. And what I've got on this particular one is a Tiemco 2488 hook and 2 1.5 millimeter or 1/16 inch silver tungsten beads. So what I'll do here to start is I'm going to take some Veevus 14-aught thread, just in plain white, and I'm going to start this. I've got both beads put on in the conventional manner, so small hole toward the hook eye. I just push them up close together, and I'll start that white thread just behind that second bead and create a little jam knot there. Then I'll trim that tag end out. Now I'm going to tie the blue poison tongue version. The blue version of the poison tongue. That fly's been around for a long time, and obviously I wanted to sort of keep that color scheme going on. So for this one, we're going to tie a gray and blue version. You can tie it in olive and black and red and purple and whatever colors you like. I'll show you the idea here, but this is really a template fly, so you can kind of match the pieces and colors as you go. But what I'll do here is I'm going to take a piece of micro tubing, and what I've got is a piece of gray, and I'm going to catch it up here behind that bead. And I want to make sure I anchor it good and tight, and I'll put several turns of thread right there just in the neck behind the bead. And I'm not going to trim this tag end off just yet. I'm going to leave that there for the moment. Because now I'm going to take this and I'm going to stretch it back. And when I get about halfway there, I can sort of gauge what I've got for thread. And what I'll do at that point is pull up, and I don't want to go right up close to the hook here. I want to leave myself enough white thread to get back to the bend of the hook. But from there forward, I'm going to color a couple inches of this thread with, in this case, this is just a blue Sharpie marker. If you're doing an olive one, you'd use black marker there, and Sharpies work just fine for what we're doing here. So you can see I've got some white thread, and then the thread turns blue, and I'm going to use the remainder of that white thread to work back down the bend. And then once I start to come into the blue thread, I'm going to use it to rib forward through the body, just with evenly spaced turns. So you can see I've just ribbed that body with the blue thread. At this point now, I'll pull this little tag up, and I stretch it pretty tight, and I'll trim that out. The reason I didn't trim it off at first is because I pulled pretty hard on it as I wrapped back over it, and if you trim it first, very often you'll pull it out. You can also see I've got still an inch or so of blue thread left here at the front. If you didn't, you could come back in and color that now. So now I'm going to take my micro tubing, and I'm going to stretch it down tight and wrap it forward over that underbody. The cool thing about this fly is I wanted to keep it really skinny just to keep the sink rate up. So I finally figured out to put the rib on the inside rather than over the top of the tubing, which worked out really nicely. So I just wrap forward over that underbody with that gray tubing, and then I'll tie that off with a few turns and stretch it and trim it out. Now I'm going to grab my whip finisher, which is not where it's supposed to be. So we'll use this one. Oh, it's exactly where it's supposed to be. That's one of the problems if you have too much junk on your desk. It was just buried under some stuff. At any rate, I've only got maybe a 1/4 inch of blue thread here, so I'm going to color just a bit more, just to make sure. And then I'll come in and I'll whip finish this thread just up here behind the bead. So we're kind of making a little blue thread head. Trim that down good and tight. Snip them off. So the last thing I'll do on this fly, I should say, while I've got this here, when I tied that whip finish, you can see the very end of this thread was the blue piece, but then where the thread crossed itself back here, during the whip finish, it also kind of bled some of that blue ink onto the thread. So before you start on your next fly, cut that colored piece off so you're just back to white thread. I should also mention that you do not want to bring the blue thread into the tube of your bobbin, because it'll color the inside of your bobbin tube as well, and then all your thread will be blue for a little while. Okay, so once I've got that whip finished, I'm going to take my blue marker and I'm just going to run it across the top of that second blue bead, kind of the top half. I'll rotate my hook here and make sure I get down halfway down both sides. If you get a little on the front bead, that's no big deal, but you can see I've colored that bead. And now I'll come in with a little shot of Solarez medium, and I'm going to take this and put this from the back edge of the front bead over that second bead, and just sort of build a bulging thorax there. I can use the tip of the needle to kind of smooth that off. I don't want it too big. You can see how I can use the needle to kind of pick up the extra. And once I've got that where I want it, I'll come in with my UV lamp and I want to cook that. Now, I've been being a pretty big advocate of cooking your UV resin from fairly far away, and kind of coming on and off with the light as you cook it, and that just seems to make it dry and cure much more thoroughly. So rather than right down here on the fly like you see everybody do, myself included, but you can see from further away and kind of blinking the light on and off, that will cure that much more thoroughly and won't come off near as easily. And that is our little 2-bit midge. Now again, you can see how brightly that blue shows up, especially against that dark background. Really shows up nicely. But pretty subtle little bug, not too much blue in this one. But again, you can do this in all sorts of different colors. You can do it in black and white, olive and brown, all red. I do one. You can mix the colors of the beads. You can use a dark bead on the front and sort of a body colored bead in the middle. All sorts of varieties. But what this is a very skinny, very heavy little midge pattern. If you're a lover of the zebra midge, I think you'll like this fly even more. Even just a little bit stouter and pretty subtle little bug. So that's the 2-bit midge. Thanks for watching. There's always more coming, and I'm going to start shooting some more of those right now. So take care.